Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Sunday, July 20th, 2025, and Obama versus Trump. What's going on? We've got Tulsi Gabbard on to explain what's happened, the interesting files that have been released, and all of the implications of that. It should be very interesting. Lots of people are calling. They arrested Trump. They threw him in. Well, they did a mugshot, right? So are we going to get an Obama mugshot? I have no idea, but it seems like maybe, right? So we'll talk about that later on in the show. Weird propaganda being published by CTV about forgetting kids in cars. Anybody could do it, they say, which no, nope. If you've got kids, that's not true at all whatsoever. There are very concerning and weird things being published trying to normalize odd behavior, and you don't just forget your kids in the car. That's not something that happens. That's definitely not true. We've got a grab bag of invasion stuff to talk about because it's happening across a lot of the Western world, and people are upset about things that are going on. People are taking lots of footage and talking about it in ways they haven't talked about it before. So I think that that's interesting enough to focus on. But the big story for today is Tamara Lich is heading to Ottawa to be sentenced for mischief, and in the longest mischief trial, she says, in Canadian history, and she's not wrong. And there's a whole bunch wrong with what's going on, considering there are violent criminals who are not getting any jail time. There are pedophiles who are not getting any jail time. There are people who are trying to buy girlfriend experiences from 15-year-olds, and their immigration status is the top priority rather than the, quote, rule of law in Canada, while at the same time, Tamara Lich and Chris Barber are being politically targeted for doing something that's perfectly legal, having a peaceful protest in Ottawa against bad policies, and they're having the book thrown at them, or it seems like they're about to have the book thrown at them. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I've been saying it for years, and I thought that having a different prime minister, even though that Carney is de facto Trudeau, it's the same thing. He's a figurehead, and he represents the same policies that Trudeau represented. So it's not really different, but I thought maybe having a different figurehead in there, they would cool it on trying to bring the state hammer down on Lich and Barber, and it seems that was misplaced optimism, I guess. I hope I'm wrong, but it seems, and I mean, the sentencing hasn't happened yet, so it's not, this is just what the Crown wants, and I think it's far too far. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Tamara Lich says, we learned last evening that the Crown has submitted their materials to our legal team for our upcoming sentencing hearing. They are seeking a 7-year prison sentence for Tamara and 8 years for Chris Barber. I haven't seen their documents yet, but hopefully I'll receive them today and can provide more details. With that, we are eastbound and headed for Ottawa. So there you go. She's on her way to sentencing. And what a twist and turn. 7 years, right? Donald Best says, Anarcho-tyranny, when the state crushes law-abiding and shields the lawless. And yeah, just to give you the Wikipedia, whatever definition, anarcho-tyranny is a system of government that fails to enforce or adjudicate protection to its citizens, so allows crime to happen to its citizens and doesn't prosecute the criminals at all, while at the same time simultaneously persecuting innocent conduct. So how dare you tell us that you don't like these policies we're enacting? We're going to enact them anyway, and we'll throw you in jail. So Donald accurately describes what anarcho-tyranny is, and he says, in honor of Tamara Lich and Chris Barber facing 9 and 7 years prison for peaceful protest against mandatory experimental injections that have now proven so deadly. You're taxed, tracked, disarmed, and arrested for defending your family, while violent thugs run wild, commit daily crimes, and walk free without consequence. A peaceful protest or a single online post earns years in prison, while pedophiles and gang shooters are handed probation to protect from deportation. This isn't a mistake, it's a plan. Coined in the 1990s by political theorist Samuel T. Francis, anarcho-tyranny describes a regime that enforces laws selectively, harsh towards peaceful citizens, permissive towards criminals. Francis warned that modern states increasingly fear their own people more than actual predators. The result, you're fined, fired, or imprisoned for misgendering someone or defending your home. They get a slap on the wrist for arson, assault, or theft. You're censored and tracked. They're excused, radicalized, and funded by government agencies and NGOs, which NGOs are funded by government, which is interesting to note. In short, law-abiding citizens are targeted while violent actors are given room to operate. especially when their violence destabilizes tradition, culture, or national identity. Francis clearly saw this in the late 20th century. Soaring urban crime met with citizen disarmament, lenient sentencing for predators, and legal regime obsessed with equality instead of order. The goal undermines civil society while expanding the administrative state. Sound familiar? Police stand down during riots but arrest you for a tweet. Courts ignore gang violence but prosecute farmers, pastors, and parents. Borders stay open to invaders but peaceful protest against mass immigration is criminalized. This is about consolidating power through engineered disorder. We must recognize the anarcho-tyranny is already here and act to dismantle it before the collapse becomes irreversible. Restore rule of law, because that's not what we have right now. We have I think accurately, an anarcho-tyranny. Restore real order, restore a justice system that serves citizens, not the regime. I think the only way to do that is to remove all the judges, remove all of the lawyers, probably to remove everybody from the system and have citizen-led tribunals. Five people, 7 people, always different people, never the same people, right? You get your name in a hat, and you don't, I think everybody who is a voter or something like that gets their name in a hat and you get pulled. And if there's a case to decide, then you have to go do that with these 5 people or whatever. And I think that would go a long way, because if you can't bribe the judge because there's 5 of them and they're always changing, that creates a difficulty in bribing the judge, right? So in order to restore actual law and order, we have citizens of the place where you are decide these cases rather than an out-of-touch judge who may have conflict of interest undeclared, right? Just like our prime minister, up until recently, I guess. Andy Lee says, totally not politically motivated at all. She's responding to Tamara Lich, and she says, she's got an old tweet of hers. She says, so the Crown Attorney trying the case against the Freedom Convoy organizers, Moise Karmiji? Sorry. Some people just tune in to watch me attempt to say names, which I can appreciate. Okay. They also, this guy who's the lawyer, the Crown Attorney against the Freedom Convoy, he attended fundraisers for Justin Trudeau and is a Liberal Party donor. We're in deeper trouble than I've imagined. Our judicial system is completely compromised. Oh yeah. If only we knew how bad it really is. Like, it's so much worse than that. It's so much worse than that. Orders of magnitude worse than that. And I wish that weren't so, because people still believe the fantasy of we live in Canada circa 1999 and our laws will protect us, because it doesn't seem like our laws will protect us at this point in time. And I hope I'm wrong about that. But it doesn't seem like I'm wrong about that. Lisa says, she's responding to Tamara Lich as well. She says, what is a reasonably observant Canadian supposed to conclude, except that protests coded far right or right wing will be prosecuted to the nth degree while others get a pass? This risks a black eye to the administration of justice. A black eye? Oh my gosh. It's well past that. We're at the point now where it's so blatant that people are beginning to notice, and they don't like people who notice anything. Okay. And so we're in a situation now that people are noticing, and they're doubling and tripling down. They're saying, actually, if you notice too hard, we're going to put you in jail as well, right? Straight to jail. Overcooked fish, undercooked chicken, right? Straight to jail. You're done. And so it seems there are a lot of people saying, so if I stand up and say, you can't come into my house because you don't live here and I'm worried for my family, I'm going to get arrested. But this guy's going to get a trip back to his 5-star luxury hotel. How does that work? But that's what's happening in the UK. So should we be surprised? I'm just surprised that it's taken this long for most people to pry their eyes open. Here's Ryan Garrettson. He's responding to Tamara Lich as well. He says, in Canada, a guy who smoked some weed and then stabbed 2 women in their head and neck staying at his Airbnb get no jail time. Or a guy gets caught trying to pay for sex with a 15-year-old but is spared jail to help with his immigration to Canada. But Tamara and Chris are looking at 7 to 8 years on a mischief charge that has been going on in courts for years now. Something is very wrong in Canada. It's trumped up charges, and they've been trying to get this through. And it seems like the judge is trying to slow walk this. Like, it seemed like the judge had some kind of hand in, let's do this after Justin Trudeau leaves office, because I don't know what stopped them from doing this last March. Right? But they didn't. And then we had stalled everything until Carney came in. And now, well, It's no different, really. Alex Zoltan's responding to Tamara Lich. He says, a friendly reminder that 2 non-citizens were given 3 years each for dragging a man to death under their Ford Mustang. So murder, bad. Mischief, way worse. How dare you? How dare you, madam? So that's the Canadian justice system on display, right? This is us, everybody. City News Toronto says a man convicted in the 2005 Boxing Day shooting of 15-year-old Jane Kriba was granted full parole in January despite a parole board report that said he had a 76% chance of reoffending. 76%. A few minutes later, he is now facing a murder charge in Montreal. So Jane Kriba was bad enough. I remember that happening. 2005, I was kind of just out of high school. So 15 years old wasn't that far away from me age-wise then. And I thought, oh my gosh, like that's terrible. And I think she was just standing outside of the Eaton Center and it was bad, like wrong place, wrong time. I don't think she was targeted because of who she was or anything like that. And so awful, like that struck me. They let that guy out and now he killed somebody else. Holy smoke. Despite knowing that he'd probably kill somebody else, like 76% chance is like, it's not a small chance of reoffending, right? This is our justice system. We're trusting our lives to this system. Why? Why do we do that? Queen Paula says, is retweeting Toronto police from yesterday, news release, rideshare driver arrested in sexual assault investigation, Weston Road and Eglinton Ave West area. Women and girls are no longer safe in Ontario, says Paula. 2 female victims ordered a rideshare, and the rideshare driver followed the victims into a nearby lobby and sexually assaulted both victims and left the area in his vehicle. And they gave his name, Mohammed Abdumalik Babikar, 30, was charged, and he's out on bail, right? So it doesn't say he's out on bail. I'm just implying, or I'm just filling in the rest of the story because that's probably what happened. Who knows? We'll see. I'll have to look into it. Lewis is responding to GB politics. Channel Migrant, who sexually assaulted a teenage girl with special needs, has been jailed for 14 months. And Lucy Connolly got 2 years and 7 months for a deleted tweet. Okay? A man who is a non-citizen sexually assaulted a special needs teenage girl, and was only jailed for half the time. Okay, right? This is not happening by accident. These are not mistakes that are happening, and it's not a mistake that it's happening in Canada and in other places too. Here are other people noticing what I'm noticing. This is a Canadian guy saying, hey, our justice system's kind of effed, eh?
Any Canadian that thinks our justice system hasn't been weaponized by the politicians, well, I don't know what glue you're sniffing. Chris Barbie sentenced in a week, and they want to put him in jail for 2 years and take away his truck, which he earns a living with. And meanwhile, in Ontario, a pedophile gets a conditional discharge because if we find him guilty of trying to meet a 15-year-old girl with $140 cash for you-know-what, then it might mess with his immigration status. It might make it harder for him to bring his wife over. Yeah, this is our political system. This is our justice system. Canada's broken. Shit show. So apparently in Canada, a charge of mischief is way worse than being a pedophile. Any Canadian that thinks our justice...
There you go. So other people are noticing this too. And I think that that's interesting as well, because there was a time where YouTube took me off air because I was noticing too much. Wiretap Media says, why is the Conservative Party silent? 2 Canadian protesters are facing 8 years in prison after the federal government broke the highest laws of the land and attempted to unleash the military on Canadian protesters, and the Conservative Party is silent. I don't hear them saying anything. Is Mr. Poilievre weighed in on this? Nope. Greg Wycliffe is weighing in on Tamara Lich as well. He says, if Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith don't talk about this, then please explain to me why they still deserve your support. Some people are saying, Kevin says they can't talk about active criminal court proceedings. This is a way to silence these people. I think that this is, if you have an injustice happening and you keep your mouth shut, that's not the right move, I think. Right? And it was the wrong move with Coots. It was the wrong move with Artur Pawlowski. It's the wrong move with Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. And I think it's inexcusable. And maybe people think that this is enough of an excuse. I don't think that rises to I don't think that rises to it. Mr. Sunshine Baby says without the trucker convoy, this kind of surprised me because he was a conservative acolyte during the election. He was one of those people who, if you pointed out problems with the conservative whatever or anything, if you tried to have a conversation with him, he would get upset if it went the wrong way, if that makes sense. If you talked about PPC or something like that, right, it would bring out more attacks than not. But I was surprised by this take. Without the trucker convoy, says Mr. Sunshine Baby, the Conservative Party was nothing, a bunch of losers who never accomplished anything. The convoy gave them a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to win, to beat Trudeau. Canadians were so angry with Trudeau, we needed someone to give us hope. The trucker convoy was the singular event that propelled the CPC into winning territory. It removed the leader, and Poilievre was put in place as leader, but then they never did anything with that, other than putting Pierre Poilievre in place and getting good polling numbers 6 months before the election, 5 months before the election. The CPC did an okay job of using the momentum of F. Trudeau to gain popularity, but they obviously dropped the ball in the final quarter. It's a big mistake for the party to stay silent on the political prosecution of Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. And Chatterbox Muse says, you whine so much. No, that's not the one I wanted to highlight. There are some people who are talking about this one. Tristan, he says the CPC barely went out to the convoy, but Maxime Bernier did and the PPC did. They were the only federal party and leader to go. CPC and the LPC are nothing but a giant uniparty. Yeah, I don't think that the Conservatives really supported the convoy, but the support for the convoy rallied around the Conservatives. But again, I did not see the Conservatives. There was Candice Bergen, and she's left. Like, she's gone now. She was the interim leader before Poilievre got put in place. She went out and talked to people, and she seemed genuine, I guess. And Poilievre, to a degree, seemed genuine, but also like a shark, right? Like, he went out and marched with James Topp for 2 minutes, something like that. And he went out and talked to the convoy people because the new leader was going out and talking to the convoy people, so now that's acceptable. But then when he became leader, he kind of turned his back on the convoy, and he didn't say anything about the convoy. And during his leadership, and then even during the election, it seemed like, I don't think convoy was really crowning anything of the CPC. So, but it is interesting that they're being completely silent on this whole thing, and it's concerning. Here is Wiretap, and yeah, this is the same thing I already said. So we'll leave that there. And I think that it is very concerning that our justice system is are going after Tamara Lich and Chris Barber so hard when there are criminals and violent criminals and people who have done horrible things, violent things, and things that Chris Barber and Tamara Lich didn't do, and they're getting out, and Chris and Tamara are facing lots of time in jail, and I think that's inappropriate. So our country doesn't seem trustworthy to execute its responsibilities, and that's unfortunate. Here is a little bit of food news. UK food strategy, says Bernie. This new government strategy isn't at all worrying, and she's being sarcastic, and won't be voted on in Parliament, which means you won't get a say. The strategy repeatedly prioritizes climate goals above actual food production. So this is a government food strategy for England. So this is from the Department for Environmental, Food and Rural Affairs. And again, I think this extrapolates. This is 2030 agenda. This is, we have to let things go wild and you can just pay more for your food. And oops, we don't have enough food. Sorry about that. I guess you'll starve because reasons for the climate and stuff. Anyway, back to this. The strategy repeatedly prioritizes climate goals above actual food production. Large sections advocate for land use change, i.e. taking farmland out of production to rewild or afforest it. What it's promoting is the quiet transformation of food policy into climate policy. Farmers are being nudged to exit food production, and the public is being conditioned to accept less and pay more and adjust their expectations. This entire document undermines domestic food output at a time when supply chains are fragile and global food inflation is high. Our food strategy now doesn't start with how do we feed the nation? It starts with how do we meet net zero? I've read it, so you don't have to. So there's a whole thread that she goes through. But again, I think just the 30,000 foot look at this shows that they're all in lockstep, and they're moving forward, and they're doing it for your safety, comrade, and it's nonsense, and it is anything but for our safety. It is to our detriment. Absolutely. Let's talk about the invasion of the West ongoing, and Data Republican starts us off, and she says, ever wonder why European cities accepted so many refugees? Same reason Colbert was pushing vaccines, I think. US aid funded. Today, I'm over my jet lag and processing the documents that she scanned this week. Already, it's pretty shocking. The refugee influx into Europe began as a U.S. taxpayer-funded subsidy. The U.S. government paid European cities to take them in, using Soros-backed operations like ARC, American Refugee Committee, as the middleman. Yes, ARC, co-founded with money from the Soros Humanitarian Fund, was running programs directly for the U.S. government. It goes even deeper and darker than that. Stay tuned. ARC handled all the logistics needs for IOM, including deciding refugee placements and schedules, at least at one point. Even today, there are plenty of financial incentives for European cities to take refugees. The following is a UN-backed initiative, translation, US-backed. So money, 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 money. This is a lot of momentum, and momentum is money. Lots of money if you do this, right? Just do this, city, and you don't have to raise your taxes on your citizens. You could take a 9% tax increase down to a 3% tax increase, and your citizens will love you for it. And just don't tell them about the migrants. Right? Here is Stephen Miller, and he says the number of illegals in LA is far greater than anyone knows. Mayor Karen Bass says, let's be clear, immigrants are the backbone of Los Angeles. This is 20 hours ago. Targeting this community doesn't just tear families apart. It's a blow to our economy. This needs to end now. I've seen pictures and videos of the freeway in Los Angeles almost completely empty, whereas before it's widely known as one of the most busy freeways in the world. And so that's interesting. Here's the mayor saying it's an attack on our economy.
And this was on Father's Day. It was really sad. I went to East LA. I went to 3 different restaurants, kind of a block with restaurants clustered. No one was there.
Right.
And the owners were saying that, because I said, well, is this like COVID? They said, no, worse.
Really?
Because the workforce is not coming in. But you remember how a lot of restaurants survived through home delivery?
Yeah.
They said people aren't ordering.
Wow.
And people aren't ordering because they don't have the money and they're scared.
So not ordering, not going to, because they're afraid of raids.
Right. They're afraid.
Yeah.
Maybe they shouldn't live in a country illegally then, because then they wouldn't be afraid if they weren't illegally in the country. I have simple solutions. I mean, you want a solution. This is the easiest solution. Go back to a country where you're not illegal in, and then you won't be afraid. You can go to restaurants. You could order take in, take out, whatever you want to call it. No problems whatsoever. Wild. Wild. These people will do mental gymnastics to justify everything and anything. Adam Brooks is talking about what's going on in the hotels in UK that are taxpayer funded. Apparently it's OnlyFans. He says, are you effing kidding me? UK News, asylum hotel sex film. 2 asylum seekers caught making OnlyFans film in hotel paid for by you in shocking abuse of the system. I'm shocked. They're making OnlyFans content on our dime. I think we've done worse, right? Like, honestly, the romp happened at the 18th century Metropole Hotel in Blackpool, which has housed hundreds of migrants since 2021. That's worse, right? Like, yes, making OnlyFans content is terrible and expensive, but it's a limited hangout. Like, it could be $50 million max, right? Like, not just for one, but like all told through the system. How much do the migrant hotels cost? Like, there's lots of ways. There's things to be outraged with, orders of magnitude. Yes, we should not be allowing people to make OnlyFans content on taxpayer dime, obviously. But holy cow, right? Like, everything is paid for by the UK taxpayer, not just the OnlyFans content. Absolutely everything. All their meals, they get wash and fold, they get security, private security, they get 4-star hotels. Like, sure, the OnlyFans is a problem, but everything about it is a problem. All of it's a problem, and orders of magnitude bigger than just the slice here, right? Like, sure, the slice here is salacious and it makes for a good headline, but the problem is the whole program. Everything about it is a problem. Okay. Here's Avery, and she says they came to the UK as migrants seeking asylum from their Sharia countries, and now they're calling for Sharia in the UK. This isn't migration; it's an invasion that we're paying for. Right? Here's this lady talking about this.
They migrated to the UK, leaving their Sharia law countries, seeking asylum, and now they are in the streets of the UK calling for Sharia in the UK.
I thought he was going to go into a Macarena style, right? Like dance or something like that. I don't know. Wild, right? So the UK brings them in to save them, and they say, thanks for saving us. Actually, we'd really rather you guys all be Muslim Sharia Muslims, please. So we're going to bring our Sharia law in here. Thumbs up. Thanks for saving us. Right? So what? Doesn't seem like they wanted saving from their Sharia law in their Muslim country. Doesn't seem like that. Ivor Cummins is is he Irish? I think he's Irish. And he says, from Facebook, a bill going through the dial right now, they're making it legal to seize your home in order to house migrants. Your attention is drawn to the phrase, all residents of Ireland. No mention is made of citizens. This is an extremely left policy driven by globalists. So part 2, it says, the state in particular recognized the common good as including the right to secure, affordable, dignified housing appropriate to need for all the residents of Ireland, and shall guarantee this right through its laws, policies, and prioritizations of resources. The state accordingly shall delimit the right to private property where it is necessary to ensure the common good and to vindicate the said right to housing for all residents of Ireland. All residents of Ireland, eh? Everybody here gets a house, and we might have to take your house to make that happen, okay? Absolutely wild. This is interesting. What if, would the First Nations people of Canada be okay if the population percentage of First Nations was smaller than a population of, say, the Indian from India percentages, right? Like, it seems like that's a wholesale replacement of an entire population. That's happened by a lot, almost double, actually. So you've got, I think it's 7%. Yeah. So, Canada says we now have more Indians from India in Canada than we have First Nation Indians. So isn't that weird? Indigenous population is 4.7% of Canada's population, 1.95 million, but the population of Indian ancestry from India is 7.7%, 3.19 million. Isn't that weird? Isn't that a strange thing to have happened? When did that happen? I wonder. I don't have the data on that, but I'm sure that it's only been in the last 10 years, and I wonder how quickly that happened. Absolutely wild, right? Here's a guy talking about this, and he says, the real Mr. Bench is sharing this. Want to know why so many places in Canada are using temporary foreign workers? It has to do with the changes the Trudeau government made over the years to the International Mobility Program. I'm worried that if we join the EU in any real way, international mobility is going to be a problem, because if you can get into the EU, then you can come into Canada too, right? So if the EU has open borders, then Canada has open borders. Right? Here's this guy.
Why is every Tim Hortons seemingly staffed with temporary foreign workers? Like, aren't there Canadians that need jobs too? Now, I don't think temporary foreign workers are a bad thing. I just am perplexed as to why every single Tim Hortons is staffed with them. Now, there is the temporary foreign worker program, where employers have to prove to the government through a labor market impact assessment that no Canadian is not only applying for the job, no Canadian is qualified for the job, forcing the employer to go outside of Canada. Typically, this was used in agriculture and construction. But over the years, the temporary foreign worker program has expanded to all types of different sectors, and something critical happened in 2014. In 2014, the government introduced the International Mobility Program, or IMP. It was tied to special work permits, post-grad permits, etc. But a key element of IMP is no labor market impact assessment is required. Employers no longer have to prove that Canadians were passed over for the job. By 2022, IMP permit holders ballooned to 472,000, more than triple the number of temporary foreign workers under the temporary foreign worker program. It got me thinking. We have more international mobility program permit holders than ever before. We have more temporary foreign workers than ever before. Employers don't need to show how Canadians were passed up on these jobs. So is Canada building this two-tier system where we have Canadians who are struggling to find jobs and trying to make their ends meet, but then we also have this cheap exploitative form of labor that's a pipeline that's growing dramatically year after year after year. What does this mean for our country and, as I've said before, social cohesion moving forward?
That it's being dismantled. That's what it means by the government's subsidies and use of monetary encouragements and punishments. It's not good. Peter Sweden says happening now, or it's happening. Greece is now getting tough on mass migration. A new draft law would mean that people who are in the country illegally will get sent to a minimum 3 years in prison if they don't leave voluntarily. This comes as they have stopped asylum applications from people from North Africa. So that's interesting. The invasion again is happening all across the Western world, and it's not good. Like, that's a bad thing. And how different countries deal with it is interesting, because up until Donald Trump came along, everybody said there is no way to deal with this, period. We can't do anything. And then Trump shut the U.S. southern border and said, immigration laws exist. What are you crazy people talking about? And all of a sudden, other places have decided to start doing similar things. Not Canada, just some other places, right? And some in fits and starts, like Greece saying, oh, just North African. Okay, but what about everywhere else, right? So we'll see how that all plays out. But again, I feel like sometimes they'll say, yes, we'll stop immigration. And people say, yay. And then all the yaying and cheering drowns out the part where they say from North Africa, or from one place, right? Like from one place that represents 5% or something like that. Or maybe some place that represents 1%, right? So we get screwed because we refuse to hold our politicians to account, I think. Let's do our grab bag of governance. How long do we have on here? 31 minutes? 31 minutes. We'll do a couple of these and then I'll have to kill the stream. Andy Lee says, Carney was Trudeau's financial advisor. He didn't inherit a mess. He created the mess. Globe and Mail says, Carney inherited a fiscal mess from Trudeau and he is set to make it worse. And I agree with Andy Lee. Mark Carney is the problem, has been the problem, and will continue to be the problem until he's removed. And even if he is removed, I don't know that we'll get anything better, because it seems like the Uniparty is in complete control in Canada. That's unfortunate. Bob says this mine layoffs, Ikati mine, are certainly unexpected and a sad day. After decades of anti-development liberal governments in Ottawa, another mine closes in the Northwest Territories, raising fears for how the Northwest Territories economy will pivot once they close, and what it will mean for Indigenous governments as the mines provide revenue and jobs for many communities. So the mine closed in an unexpected way, and there's a little bit more color here on this. Here we go.
Everybody, it's Bob Zimmer in Yellowknife at what used to be Diamond Row, and this is the actual place where they cut diamonds from the Ikati mine. Well, in case you haven't heard, this is from CKLB Radio. Updated Ikati mine layoffs, certainly unexpected and a sad day, says Northwest Territories Industry Minister. What used to be a very busy diamond cutting row just beside the airport in Yellowknife, this was the last diamond cutting center that was actually working. There was vehicles here literally days ago, is now completely abandoned and empty. The Ikati mine is located in the Lac de Grasse region, approximately 300 kilometers northeast of Yellowknife, and has been in operation since 1998. In 2024, it employed 1,242 people, 700 direct employees, and 542 contractors. That's 1,242 jobs directly affected by the Ikati mine closing, and a total of 2,500 jobs affected by its closure indirectly. It's been devastating for the community and devastating for Northwest Territories. This is what happens after you have 10 years of an anti-development federal government under Justin Trudeau and now Mark Carney.
The headline highlighted said it was not an unfortunate accident. It was the intended consequences of the policies that have been enacted by this government. Absolutely true. We are being managed with bad policies on purpose. And I don't know what the outcome they're trying to drive is, but it sure isn't good governance and a peaceful